The paper sat on his desk like a trap already sprung. Not toward me, not yet. Just there. Waiting. My boss, Warren, gestured to the chair across from him. His voice was soft, measured. The kind of tone people use when they're about to do something terrible but want credit for being gentle. Allison, sit down. Sep. He slid the paper forward. 1 page. Clean edges. Pre-printed. A resignation letter with my name already typed at the top and a blank space for my signature at the bottom. My stomach lurched before I even read the first line. I think this is the best path forward, he said, fingers drumming once against the wood. For everyone. I stared at the document. The words blurred slightly. Not from tears. From shock. This wasn't a conversation. This was a script, and I'd arrived late to a scene already blocked and rehearsed. I don't understand, I said quietly. Warren leaned back, arms crossed. The company is restructuring. Your role is being eliminated. But if you resign voluntarily, we can make this clean. No mess. No complications. His eyes didn't meet mine. That's when I knew. This wasn't about restructuring. This was about him. Clean for who? Asked. Warren's jaw tightened. For everyone, Allison. This way there's no termination on your record. No regulatory notifications. You leave with dignity, and we all move forward. Regulatory notifications. The words hung in the air like smoke. Understood now. If he fired me, the state licensing board would be notified automatically. There would be questions, reviews, scrutiny. Things Warren couldn't afford right now. Not with the audit rumors swirling and his own performance under review. But if I resigned quietly, none of that happened. This protects you too, he added like he was doing me a favor. A resignation looks better than a termination. Trust me. I looked at the paper again. Standard boilerplate language. Effective immediately. No severance. No transition period. Just gone. I've been here for 6 years, I said. And we appreciate that. But circumstances change. This is just business. Just business. I'd heard him use that phrase before. Usually right before he took credit for someone else's work or threw a team member under the bus to save himself. When do you need my answer? Asked. Now would be ideal. Of course it would. My face burned. Not anger yet. Humiliation. I had trained Warren when he first arrived. I'd fixed his mistakes when clients complained. I'd covered for him during the Morrison account disaster, staying late for 3 weeks straight to salvage a contract he'd nearly destroyed through incompetence. And now he sat across from me, unable to maintain eye contact, waiting for me to erase myself so he could avoid consequences. I wanted to scream, flip the desk, to tell him exactly what kind of man he was. Instead I smiled. Shock does that. It makes you polite when you should be furious. Can I ask why? My voice stayed steady somehow. Warren shifted in his seat. It's not personal. The board wants to reduce overhead. Your salary is substantial. And frankly, your role can be absorbed by other team members. My role, I repeated softly. The operational work. The compliance paperwork. It's not that complicated. We can redistribute it. The operational work. He actually said that. I almost laughed. He had no idea. None of them did. I see, I said. Warren's shoulders relaxed slightly. He thought I was breaking. Accepting. That was his first mistake. My name is Allison Parker. I'm 34 years old, and until that moment, I believed loyalty mattered if you gave enough of it. I was wrong. For 6 years, I had been the company's senior compliance officer. Not a glamorous title. Not one that impressed people at parties. But critical. Our company, Vertex Solutions, provided specialized financial consulting services. High-level stuff. The kind that required specific regulatory approval and active oversight. That oversight came through a state-issued operational license. Without it, we couldn't legally offer our most profitable service line, which generated roughly 70% of company revenue. The license wasn't issued to Vertex Solutions. It was issued to me. Personally. Name. My credentials. My responsibility. It required continuous active oversight, regular compliance reporting, and personal accountability for every transaction processed under its authority. And here's the important part. It was non-transferable. If I left the company for any reason, the license didn't automatically transfer to someone else. The company would need to apply for a new license under a different qualified individual, which required regulatory review, background checks, and approval that could take months, maybe longer. Warren knew this, or he should have known it. But sitting there watching him tap that desk impatiently, I realized something. He'd forgotten. If I sign this, I said carefully, what happens to the Jameson contract? And the Brightwell account? Those are active projects. Warren waved a hand dismissively. We'll handle it. Kyle can take over your workload temporarily until we hire a replacement. Oh. Kyle was a junior analyst who'd been with the company for 8 months. Smart kid. Good with spreadsheets. Absolutely unqualified to hold an operational license. Kyle doesn't have the certifications, I said. He can get them. That takes 6 months minimum. Plus the application process. Plus regulatory approval. Warren's expression tightened. We'll figure it out, Allison. That's not your concern anymore. Not my concern. He really didn't understand. I glanced down at the resignation letter again. Effective immediately. The date was already filled in. Today. This says I'm leaving today, I noted. Yes. Clean break. Better for everyone. And my projects. The compliance reports due next week. The renewal applications. We'll manage. His tone had shifted. Impatient now. I need your decision, Allison. Sign the letter or we proceed with termination. Your choice. It wasn't a choice. It was a threat. But he'd made one critical error. He thought I needed him more than he needed me. Picked up the pen. Warren's face relaxed immediately. He thought he'd won. I appreciate you being reasonable about this, he said, already mentally moving on. We'll process your final paycheck by the end of the week. You can clear out your desk this afternoon. This afternoon. Not even a full day. I looked at the signature line. The pen hovered above the paper. Just to confirm, I said slowly. This is a voluntary resignation. Not a termination. Correct. And there will be no notification to the state licensing board about my departure? Warren frowned slightly. Why would there be? You're resigning. Just making sure we're clear. We're clear. Now if you'll just sign. Sign. My signature was neat, deliberate. I took my time forming each letter. Warren pulled the paper toward him immediately, like I might change my mind. He glanced at it briefly, then filed it into a folder on his desk. Thank you for handling this professionally, he said. HR will be in touch about your exit paperwork. Understood. My legs felt steady. My hands didn't shake. One last thing, I said. Warren looked up, already distracted by his computer screen. Yes. Good luck with the Jameson renewal. It's due Tuesday. His expression flickered. Uncertain. I walked out. By noon my access badges stopped working. I tried to log into my email. Password invalid. Check the shared drive. Access denied. My calendar invitations disappeared. Appointments vanishing like I'd never scheduled them. Co-workers avoided looking at me as I packed my desk. A few offered awkward smiles. Most pretended to be busy with suddenly urgent tasks. Nobody asked what happened. Nobody said goodbye. Tiffany from accounting walked past twice, clearly wanting to say something, but each time she glanced toward Warren's office and kept moving. Packed slowly. Personal items mostly. The coffee mug my team gave me 2 years ago. A small plant that had somehow survived my care. The framed photo of my sister's wedding. I left behind all the files. All the documentation. All the procedures I'd written and refined over 6 years. They'd need them soon. By 2 o'clock I was walking out of the building for the last time. The afternoon sun felt too bright. Too normal. Like the world should have noticed something significant had just happened, but it hadn't. I sat in my car for a long moment, hands on the steering wheel, staring at the building's entrance. Then I drove home. The first 3 days were quiet. No farewell email went out. No announcement to staff. I checked LinkedIn, wondering if Warren would post something professional and generic about pursuing new opportunities. Nothing. It was like I'd never existed. My phone stayed silent. No calls from colleagues. No messages checking in. The company had erased me efficiently. I didn't reach out either. Silence, I'd learned, was powerful when other people didn't understand what it meant. On day 4 I started job hunting. Dated my resume. Reached out to old contacts. The license credentials on my profile generated immediate interest. On day 6 I had 3 interviews scheduled. On day 7 I accepted an offer. New company. Better title. 20% salary increase. They specifically recruited me because of the license, which they needed for their own expansion plans. I would start in 2 weeks. But first I needed to handle one administrative detail. I called the state licensing board and requested the standard separation notification form. The one you file when you leave a position that holds regulatory oversight. It was routine. Required. Part of my professional responsibility. The form asked for my departure date, my former employer, and whether the license would be transferred or deactivated. I marked, deactivated. Then I submitted it. 2 weeks after my resignation my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello. Allison. It's Tiffany. From Vertex. Her voice was strained. Nervous. Hey, Tiffany. What's up? I probably shouldn't be calling. But things are kind of chaotic here, and I thought you should know. Waited. We had a compliance audit scheduled for the Jameson account. The auditor requested documentation of active oversight. Warren submitted the usual paperwork, but she trailed off. But what? Your name is still listed as the responsible party. The auditor flagged it because you're not employed here anymore. He's asking for proof of license transfer or a new qualified applicant. I said nothing. Warren didn't know, Tiffany continued quickly. About the license thing. He thought it was a company license, not a personal one. He's been trying to reach you. My phone had been ringing from blocked numbers. I'd ignored every call. Allison, is there any way to fix this? The auditor put a hold on the account until we can show proper oversight. That's a $3 million contract. I filed the required separation notification with the state board, I said calmly. That's all I'm required to do. But can't you just extend it or transfer it? Warren said. Tiffany, the license isn't transferable. Vertex will need to apply for a new one under a different qualified individual. That's the regulation. Silence on her end. How long does that take? She finally asked. 6 to 9 months. Sometimes longer. Oh my God. The calls increased after that. Warren's direct line. Char extensions. Unknown numbers at odd hours. I watched my phone light up, vibrate, go silent. Then light up again. I didn't answer. On Tuesday I started my new job. The onboarding was smooth, professional. My new boss, Patricia, actually smiled when she met me. We're thrilled to have you, she said. Your experience is exactly what we need to expand into the market Vertex dominated. Dominated. Past tense. That evening, I received an email from Warren's personal account. Subject. Urgent. Need to discuss transition. The message was long. Desperate. He explained there had been miscommunication about the license requirements. He needed my help facilitating a smooth transition. He was willing to pay consulting fees for my time. I deleted it without responding. The next morning another email. This one from Vertex's CEO. Someone I'd met exactly twice in 6 years. Subject. Regulatory compliance matter. More formal. Still desperate. They were surprised to learn about the license situation and hoped we could work together to resolve it professionally. They offered a severance package retroactively, a bonus for my years of service, a glowing reference letter. Everything they should have offered before forcing me to resign. I deleted that one too. By the end of my second week at the new job, the industry grapevine was buzzing. Vertex Solutions had paused all new client intake. Existing contracts were being reviewed. Several major accounts had requested status updates and weren't getting satisfactory answers. One of those accounts called me directly. "Allison, it's Thomas Brennan from Brightwell Industries." I remembered Thomas. Demanding client. Appreciated competence. "Hi, Thomas. I heard you left Vertex. Is that true?" "Yes. About 3 weeks ago." "Where did you land?" Told him. "Interesting. Listen, I'll be direct. Vertex is giving us the runaround on our quarterly compliance report. They keep saying it's in progress, but we're past deadline. Do you know what's going on over there?" I chose my words carefully. I'm not in a position to speak for Vertex's current operations. "But you handled our account before you left, right?" "I did. Can I ask why you left?" "I was asked to resign." Thomas went quiet. Then, "They fired the person holding their operational license. They weren't aware of the regulatory implications." "Jesus." He exhaled slowly. "Allison, if I wanted to move our account to your new company, would you be able to handle it?" "I would. Expect a call from our VP next week. We're done with Vertex." That was the first client. 3 more followed within days. A month after my departure, Vertex issued a company-wide memo. I didn't see it directly, but Tiffany forwarded it to me late one night with the subject line, "You should see this." The memo, signed by the CEO, announced a temporary pause on their flagship service line due to regulatory restructuring. Staff were reassured this was a strategic decision, and that normal operations would resume shortly. It was corporate speak for, "We're in crisis and don't know how to fix it." The memo didn't mention me, didn't mention the license, didn't acknowledge the real problem. Instead, it blamed changing regulatory landscapes and industry-wide compliance challenges. Tiffany's message included a single line, "People are updating their resumes." I wasn't surprised. Without the primary service line, Vertex was bleeding revenue. They had overhead built for a $70 million annual operation. Now they were running on 30% of that. The math didn't work. Staff cuts would come soon. Then office closures. Then the slow, inevitable spiral that happens when a company loses its core business overnight. All because Warren wanted a clean resignation. All because he didn't read the fine print. All because he underestimated the quiet woman he was erasing. Kyle, the junior analyst Warren thought could replace me, lasted 6 weeks. I heard about it through the network. He'd tried to fast-track his certification, spending thousands on accelerated courses. He'd submitted an emergency application to the state board for a temporary oversight license. Denied. The board required 2 years minimum experience in regulatory compliance. Kyle had 8 months. He quit the day after his application was rejected. Took a job at a startup that didn't need specialized licenses. Vertex tried to hire externally. Posted the position with an inflated salary and urgent hiring timeline. Few candidates applied. Those who did backed out once they learned about the situation. Nobody wanted to inherit a sinking ship. Nobody wanted to explain to future employers why they took a role at a company that was publicly struggling with basic regulatory compliance. The position stayed vacant. Meanwhile, I was thriving. My new company secured 4 major contracts in my first 2 months. 3 of those were former Vertex clients who'd jumped ship. Patricia started including me in executive strategy meetings. She asked for my input on expansion plans. She introduced me to the board as the best hire we've made in years. I got a raise before my 90-day review. 3 months after my resignation, Warren called me from a different number. I was in a meeting when my phone buzzed. Unknown caller. I let it go to voicemail. The message was 3 minutes long. His voice sounded different. "Mueller. Less certain. Allison, it's Warren. I know you've been avoiding my calls, and I understand why. But I need to talk to you. Not about the license transfer, I know that's not possible now. But we need help. Vertex is in trouble. Real trouble. The board is talking about bankruptcy. People are losing their jobs. I made a mistake. Big one. And I'm asking, not as your former boss, but as someone who's watching everything collapse. Is there anything you can tell me that might help us salvage this? He paused. I could hear other voices in the background. An office that used to be busy, now echoing and half empty. I'm sorry, he continued, for how I handled your resignation, for not understanding what you actually did here, for all of it. Just, please call me back. I deleted the voicemail, not out of cruelty, not out of revenge, but because there was nothing I could say that would fix what he'd broken. The license couldn't be transferred. The regulations couldn't be bypassed. The damage couldn't be undone. Warren had made his choice. Now he was living with the consequences. 4 months post-resignation, Vertex laid off 40% of their staff. The announcement made local business news. Once prominent financial consulting firm cuts workforce amid regulatory challenges. The article was carefully worded, but people in the industry knew what regulatory challenges meant. It meant they'd lost their license and couldn't operate their core business. One paragraph mentioned recent personnel changes in key compliance roles as a contributing factor. That was me. I was the personnel change. Though they still hadn't said my name publicly. Still hadn't admitted what actually happened. My LinkedIn profile started getting messages. Former Vertex employees asking about openings at my new company. Recruiters asking if I knew other licensed compliance officers. Competitors asking if I'd consult on their licensing applications. Helped where I could. Gave references for former colleagues who'd been decent to me. Offered advice to people trying to navigate the certification process. But I didn't help Vertex. Warren sent 2 more emails. Both ignored. The CEO tried calling. I blocked the number. Their attorney sent a formal letter suggesting I had a professional obligation to assist with the transition. My own attorney responded that I'd fulfilled all legal requirements and owed them nothing further. The letters stopped. 5 months after my departure, Vertex announced they were closing their downtown office and consolidating operations. Strategic restructuring, the press release said. What it actually meant, we're broke. The building I'd worked in for 6 years, the place where Warren had slid that resignation letter across his desk, was being sold to cover debts. Staff were relocated to a smaller suburban location. Half the size. Quarter of the prestige. I drove past the old building one afternoon. Saw the for sale sign in the window. The lobby I'd walked through every morning was dark. Me. Felt surreal. Like watching a ghost. Not sad exactly. Just strange. 6 months ago, this building represented stability. Permanence. A company that seemed too big to fail. Now it was vacant commercial real estate. All because of a single overlooked detail. A license Warren thought was paperwork. A role he thought was replaceable. A person he thought didn't matter. Warren's LinkedIn profile changed 6 months after my resignation. The title under his name shifted from Director of Operations Vertex Solutions to Available for New Opportunities. He'd been let go. Or forced to resign. The irony wasn't lost on me. No formal announcement. No farewell post. Just a quiet profile update and then silence. The same silence he'd imposed on me. I wondered if they gave him a resignation letter pre-written with his name at the top. Wondered if someone told him it was the cleanest way, and better for everyone. Probably not. Men like Warren usually get severance packages and face-saving exit stories. But he was gone. That was what mattered. Vertex lingered on after that. A shadow of its former self. 15 employees in a suburban office suite. Small-scale consulting projects that didn't require licensing. Barely scraping by. They'd never recover the ground they lost. Never rebuild the reputation they destroyed. never reclaim the market position they'd abandoned. The company would probably limp along for another year or two before finally closing for good. But effectively, Vertex died the day I walked out with that license. They just didn't know it yet. 1 year after my forced resignation, I was promoted to Director of Compliance Operations. My own office. Team of 5 reporting to me. Equity stake in the company. Real influence on company strategy. Patricia announced it at the quarterly all-hands meeting, praising my exceptional leadership and instrumental role in our expansion success. People applauded. Genuinely. Not the polite golf clap of corporate obligation, but actual appreciation. After the meeting, several team members congratulated me, asked questions about my career path, wanted advice on their own professional development. I was visible now, valued, not just for what I could do but for who I was. That evening I updated my LinkedIn profile with a new title. Within an hour I had 23 connection requests, 12 congratulatory messages. One message stood out. It was from Tiffany at Vertex. Congratulations, Allison. You deserve this. Things are quiet here now. Most of us moved on. Just wanted you to know that everyone understands what really happened. And why. We don't blame you. Warren made his choice. You made yours. Proud to have worked with you. I replied with a simple thank you. Then I closed the laptop and poured myself a glass of wine. 1 year ago, I sat in Warren's office, staring at a resignation letter, feeling humiliated and powerless. Now I was here, thriving. The real victory wasn't Warren losing his job. It wasn't Vertex struggling. It wasn't even my promotion, though that felt good. The real victory was simpler. I slept well at night. I showed up to work without dread. Without checking my phone anxiously. Without wondering if today would be the day someone took credit for my work or blamed me for their mistakes. I had colleagues who respected my expertise. Boss who valued my input. Work that challenged me without crushing me. That was the victory Warren could never take back. He tried to make me disappear quietly, thinking I was disposable, thinking the company would barely notice my absence. Instead, my absence became the thing they couldn't ignore. The license I held wasn't just a credential. It was proof of competence, experience, and trust that couldn't be replicated overnight. Warren learned that lesson too late. Organizations learn it eventually. People aren't replaceable just because you decide they are. Some roles require more than a job description and a salary. They require actual expertise. And expertise, real expertise, doesn't grow on demand. It's built over years. Earned through experience. Proven through results. You can't fake it. You can't rush it. You can't force someone to resign and expect the work to just continue. I ran into Warren once, 8 months after his exit from Vertex. It was at an industry conference. I was attending as a panelist, speaking about regulatory compliance best practices. He was in the audience. I noticed him immediately when I walked on stage. He sat near the back, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I delivered my presentation smoothly, discussed emerging regulatory trends, answered questions from attendees. Throughout, I could feel his eyes on me. After the panel ended, he approached as I was collecting my materials. Allison. Turn. Warren. Good presentation, he said. The words came out stiff, forced. Thank you. An awkward silence stretched between us. He looked older somehow. Tired. The confident swagger he'd once carried was gone. I wanted to. He stopped, swallowed. I owe you an apology. For how I handled things. Waited. I didn't understand the situation, he continued. With the license, with everything you actually did. I thought it would be simple. I was wrong. Yes, I said simply. You were. For what it's worth, I know now. What I cost the company. What I cost people their jobs. He looked down. What I cost myself. I could have said many things. Could have told him exactly how his ignorance destroyed an entire company. Could have listed every person who suffered because of his decision. Instead I said, I hope you learned something. Then I walked away. 2 years after my resignation, I attended a wedding for a former colleague from Vertex. Several other former employees were there. We gathered at a table during the reception, sharing stories and catching up. "Whatever happened to Warren?" someone asked. "Last I heard, he's doing contract work," Tiffany said. "Project management stuff. Nothing permanent." "He tried to reach out to me on LinkedIn," another colleague added. "Asked if we had any openings at my company. I didn't respond." The conversation shifted to Vertex itself. "They finally closed completely last month," someone said. "The website's down. Phone disconnected. Just gone." A moment of silence followed. Not mourning exactly. More like acknowledging the end of something that had already been over for a while. "It's weird," Tiffany said. "A whole company just gone. All because of one decision." "Not one decision," I corrected gently. "A lot of decisions. For years. Warren's choice to force me out was just the one that finally broke everything." Everyone nodded. They understood. Organizations don't collapse from single mistakes. They collapse from patterns. From cultures that value authority over expertise. From leaders who prioritize control over competence. Warren was a symptom, not the disease. Vertex had been sick long before I left. I just happened to be the weight-bearing wall they removed. My career flourished in ways I never expected. 3 years after leaving Vertex, I was recruited to join a national compliance advisory board. My name appeared in industry publications. I keynote conferences. People sought my opinion, valued my expertise, remembered my name. All the things Warren said didn't matter, suddenly mattered very much. I mentored younger compliance officers, helping them navigate the certification process. I shared the lessons I'd learned, not just about regulations but about recognizing your own value. "Never let someone convince you that your expertise is replaceable," I told them. "If they could replace you easily, they would have already. The fact that they need you proves your worth." I thought about Warren sometimes. Wondered if he'd found stable work. If he'd learned to respect expertise instead of dismissing it. Mostly, I hoped he'd become a better leader. For whatever team had him next. But that wasn't my responsibility anymore. My responsibility was to myself. To my career. To the people who valued what I brought to the table. That was enough. Someone asked me once if I regretted how everything happened. "Would you do it differently?" a mentee asked. "If you could go back, would you have fought the resignation? Sued them? Made it public?" I thought about it carefully. "No," I said finally. Fighting would have meant staying engaged with people who didn't respect me. Suing would have kept me emotionally tied to that place for years. Making it public would have felt like revenge, not justice. "So you're glad you just walked away?" "I didn't just walk away," I corrected. "I walked away with my license, my integrity, and my peace of mind." Warren thought he was forcing me out. Really, he was setting me free. But Vertex collapsed. All those people lost their jobs. "Those jobs were already at risk," I said. Vertex's problems ran deeper than me. I was just the most visible casualty before I became the most visible consequence. The mentee nodded slowly. "So the lesson is, know your worth." The lesson is that power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it's quiet, invisible. You carry it with you every day without realizing it's there. Until someone tries to take it. Exactly. Until someone underestimates you so completely that they accidentally reveal how much they actually needed you. That was Warren's final gift to me. Not intentional. Not kind. But valuable nonetheless. He showed me my own power. 5 years after that resignation letter, I received an unexpected message. It was from a journalist writing a piece about business failures and regulatory compliance. She'd heard about the Vertex situation and wanted to interview me. "I've spoken to several former Vertex employees," she wrote. "They all mentioned you. Said you were the reason the company collapsed. I'd like to hear your side." I considered declining. The story was old news. Rehashing it served no purpose. But something in her message made me reconsider. Maybe sharing the story could help someone else recognize their situation before it was too late. I agreed to an interview. We met at a coffee shop. She asked thoughtful questions, listened carefully, took notes. "So you never intended to cause the company to fail?" she asked. "I intended to protect my professional credentials and follow regulatory requirements," I said. "What happened to Vertex was a consequence of their choices, not mine. But you knew they'd struggle without the license. I knew it was required for their business." "Yes. And you chose not to help them after you left." I met her eyes directly. "They forced me to resign. They erased me without warning. They treated my role as disposable. I owed them nothing beyond legal compliance, which I provided." She wrote that down carefully. The article published 3 weeks later was fair, balanced. It laid out the facts without assigning blame. The headline read, "When compliance becomes critical, how one company lost everything by underestimating expertise." Several people shared it. Several more reached out to say they'd experienced similar situations. My inbox filled with stories of people who'd been dismissed, undervalued, overlooked. I responded to each one. "Know your worth," I wrote. "And never apologize for protecting it." Today, 7 years after Warren slid that resignation letter across his desk, I run my own consulting firm. I specialize in regulatory compliance and licensing requirements. I help companies understand what they actually need to operate legally. I train staff. I prevent the kind of disaster that destroyed Vertex. Business is good. My office has a view of the city. My team is small but exceptional. My clients respect my expertise because I no longer accept clients who don't. I learned that lesson the hard way. Sometimes I think about that moment in Warren's office. The paper on the desk. The choice that wasn't really a choice. The fear that wanted me to comply. I think about the woman I was then. Scared. Humiliated. Convinced she needed their approval to matter. And I think about the woman I became. Certain. Grounded. Aware of her own value. The difference isn't just success. It's peace. I built a career where my expertise is visible. Where my contributions are named. Where my worth isn't questioned because I won't work with people who question it. Warren taught me something important that day, though he didn't mean to. He taught me that some people will only recognize your value after you walk away. That power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it walks away intact while everything behind it collapses. They thought I was replaceable. The license proved otherwise. And I never looked back.